Lights, camera, action. Up next we have Movie Spotlight, where we discuss some of the latest releases on streaming services or at the Korean box office. And this week, film critics Jason Bechervaise and Darcy Paquet join us in the studio. Hello guys, it is an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
All right. So we're going to talk about two films today, I believe, two Korean films, that is. And let's begin with the one that's topping the box office, Ryoo Seung-wan's female-led film Smugglers, or the Korean title is Milsu, I believe. It's sold over 2.5 million tickets already since its release last week. This film focuses on a group of divers known as Haenyeo, right? Jason, please tell us more.
Yeah, that's right. So it's set in a coastal village on Jeju Island during the 1970s. And you've got this group of divers, they go to these remarkable depths, without any breathing equipment to pick up, ocean life. And they're struggling. So they turn to a risky smuggling scheme after their income dries up because a chemical factory is built in the area. Now, this particular scheme is put to a stop when local customs basically catch them in the act, and this particular raid has really tragic consequences, putting an end to the relationship between the two major protagonists of the story, played by Kim Soo and Yeom Jung-ah. But they kind of later come together when you've got this big kind of kingpin of the smuggling business, played by the wonderful Jo In-sung in this movie, and he gets involved, and ultimately leads to a really enjoyable climax where they're trying to get some diamonds from the bottom of the ocean. It's co-written and directed by action maestro Ryoo Seung-wan.
That's right.
He's famous for Die Bad, Adahan, The Berlin File veteran, and lots of other films. It's produced by his wife, Kang Hae-jung. And their production company has a really impressive track record at the box office, so they know what their audience wants. Exit, veteran, hostage. Also stars Park Jung-min, Kim Jong-soo, and Go Min-si.
Okay. Ryoo Seung-wan, if you have Ryoo Seung-wan and a cast like this, you just can't go wrong. So congrats big time on their success already in terms of box office score. But Darcy, I believe you did the subtitles for this film, and I hear that it's getting some really, really interesting attention, right? Why is that?
The film? The
subtitles, yeah.
I haven't even been aware of it. I don't read anything online, but
you can be honest.
It was a really difficult film to translate, I think.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, there's a lot of slang. His dialogue in general, he squeezes a lot into a small amount, and it's very it's delivered in a really kind of exuberant way, and it's always kind of a challenge to try to squeeze things in. Characters are speaking really quickly on top of each other. So I'm unaware of the controversy, and maybe it's better that way. But yeah, I enjoyed working on the film. I've worked on a couple other of his films before, and the dialogue is one of the things that he's known for as a filmmaker.
Yes.
So it's a combination of interesting characters and action and the dialogue, and in this case it's set in the 1970s, which is new for him. He's a director who's always really been influenced by 1970s Hollywood cinema. The old films by Scorsese and
yes, absolutely.
Taxi Driver. And so it's good to see him kind of set a film within that time period, kind of put a Korean take on that style, because there is something about the storytelling that recalls that vibe, and the fact that it's working well with audiences is really exciting. I got to see the film before it was released, and I was wondering if it would work, and it's not a typical film. There are a few other films being released this year that feel anything like this, and certainly it does have these highlight moments, including in particular this underwater action sequence. And he's famous for action sequences, but this is the first time doing it underwater. But yeah, I'm just really happy that the film's doing well.
All right. And, the reason why maybe I should have been a little bit more specific, but the reason I ask you about the subtitles is because it's getting really, really good positive reviews regarding how especially the barrier-free subtitles, right? So, yeah. I mean, people like, us, we're very familiar with, for example, when we have a Criterion Collection Blu-ray disc, the subtitles for hearing impaired, you have a look at that and you see how much effort and care is put into that for a particular demographic which needs those kind of subtitles. And what I hear is that people who don't necessarily even need those subtitles, when they go watch the film and they see your work, they're like, oh, this is really, really interesting. It's that extra cherry on the cake, if you will, right? So a huge kudos to you on that.
Thank you.
All right. And let's go back to you, Jason. I believe you went to the press screening in Seoul that was very well attended. Yeah. Lots of strong reactions. Was that an indicator of what was to come, given that the film is performing so well in cinemas?
Yeah, it was. I wasn't expecting so many people there. It was almost like the whole industry was present, and it was so kind of. It almost felt euphoric. I mean, it's been so long since I've been in a press screening that was so well attended, and the reaction was so positive. And there's just a real sense of optimism in the screening, and that's been, somewhat absent of late. And I like the film a lot. It's totally not what I expected. I feel like it's almost like Ryoo Seung-wan is like driving us, and he's constantly changing gears. And it starts in a certain way, and then you have all these like really interesting sequences. You've got these characters, the dialogue, as Darcy mentioned, and certainly the 1970s has been a big influence on him. I mean, people have mentioned, actually some critics have mentioned Tarantino and some later filmmakers, but actually when I was watching it, it was kind of reminding me of some 1970s Korean films. There's a flashback sequence with the kind of the colors used, the aesthetic, and it's just a lot of fun. It's really fun, it's just really, really enjoyable, really accessible. I can see why audiences are getting behind it. And it's a female-led film.
Yes.
And that's something that should be celebrated. And the cast are just wonderful. And you do have male characters in there. But yeah, it's just real energy behind it in terms of the cast and the storytelling, the set pieces. And it was a real treat for me. I wasn't expecting it to be so good.
Brilliant. Okay, I think I know what I'm going to have to do this weekend. All right, but let's move on to the second film. This one is Kim Sung-hoon's Ransomed. The Korean title is 비공식작전, and of course Kim Sung-hoon is also a very highly acclaimed filmmaker. He made A Hard Day in 2014, and then there was also Tunnel, and what about the huge Netflix series Kingdom, the Korean zombie pick, right? Now, Darcy, let me go to you first on this one. Tell us a little bit about this film.
Yes, so it's based on a true story. Min-jun, played by Ha Jung-woo, is a South Korean diplomat who, really wants to be posted to the U.S. He's kind of begging to be posted to the U.S. and it's not working out. And then, one day late at night at the office, he's the only one there, and on his way out, a phone call comes in, and then when he picks it up, he's just hearing this tapping on the other side. But he realizes that it's a coded message, and when he, figures out what this person is saying, he realizes that it's from this colleague who's been abducted in Lebanon, in Beirut the previous year during the Lebanese civil war. And he was presumed dead. Everyone had basically given up on him, but then he realizes that this person is actually still alive. And so, there's a meeting at the foreign ministry, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And one complicating factor is that, this is in the run-up to the Seoul Olympics, and there are a lot of complicated political things going on, as well as this rivalry with the security services and the foreign ministry. And so basically they try to do this in a kind of an unofficial way. They send Min-jun, Ha Jung-woo's character, to the Middle East, although initially to Switzerland, to this other kind of in-between broker who is going to try to arrange a payment to get the hostage back. But things go wrong, as things do. And it ends up being this quite complicated situation.
I see. And Jason, I want to have a listen to your take as well, especially regarding the fact that the geographical setting, a geopolitical setting, if I will, is the Middle East in these particular times. How do you see the significance of that?
Yeah, no, it follows a couple of other films. You got Escape from Mogadishu, directed by Ryoo Seung-wan,
That's right.
and The Point Men, so films set in the Arab world or, South Asia. And yeah, I mean, in that sense, there's definitely some similarities, the backdrop. But actually, what I liked about this film, Kim Sung-hoon's quite known for the way he his set pieces, but also how he's able to handle different tones. So one minute it's quite funny, and then one minute it's riveting, and one minute it's quite emotional. And so he kind of leaves his mark here. And I thought it's a very well paced film, and the set pieces are fantastic. And yeah, I found it gripping. I actually went to the press screening, which was conversely a somewhat muted reaction. I think partly because there are far fewer critics compared to the Milsu screening, Smuggling. So I do wonder whether this film is generating the attention it needs to really kind of recoup some of its budget, because it's a very expensive film.
Yes, that's right.
I was looking online at its budget, and at least 20 billion won, possibly more. So it needs to sell at least 5 million tickets to break even. So I'm a little bit concerned that it might lose money, but actually I thought it was a good film.
Darcy, what about you? Is it going to lose money or make money?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that this came out sort of in the same year as The Point Men, because it does feel really similar in some ways, even though it's very different filmmakers behind the camera. You have a different mood. Point Men's much more kind of realistic. And yeah, I mean, The Point Men didn't do that well, and then this film too. I think it's just going to be hard to market in the summer, where you have other movies that are kind of more dynamic, and the poster doesn't really stand out among all the other things that are happening.
Yeah.
I think when people actually sit down and see it, they'll find it to be entertaining and well made, and there's a lot of tension, and the storytelling's well done. I agree with Jason that Kim Sung-hoon is a really capable filmmaker who can kind of elevate a normal story, and it looks great. They shot it mostly in Morocco, a bit in Italy as well, and yeah, so I encourage people to see it.
So it is a good film.
Yeah, and I am a little bit worried. I mean, it has the bromance as well, which is a characteristic of many Korean films. I mean, this is very male-driven. There aren't many female characters in this film, so that's a weakness. But yeah, the whole bromance thing is quite entertaining. You've got this taxi driver, and you've got Ha-jung with this diplomat. They kind of hate each other, love each other, and you have that chemistry, which we've seen time and time again in Korean films.
Sure.
Ashfall, and going back to some of the early kind of blockbusters. Even JSA. But yeah, it's got a lot of those local elements. It's shot overseas. I do hope people go and see it, because it's so expensive.
That's right. Okay, well, according to our resident film critics, at least artistically, it is a really, really well-made film, of course, from a star film director. So I hope our listeners will be able to check that film and The Smugglers as well out. All right, Jason, Darcy, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
thank you.
Have a great weekend.